Good morning, everyone. My name is Sneha, and I'm from the marketing team of LEAD. LEAD is India's largest school edtech company. And today, on behalf of everyone at LEAD, I would like you to invite all of you to this live webinar on how to become a great teacher leader. Today, we have with us Ritika Chawla. She is the Vice President, Academic Learning and Development at LBPL. She's an alumnus of Azim Premji University at Bangalore and Symbiosis International University in Pune. Ritika comes with 14 years of experience in the education space. She has been personally responsible for coaching 950 schools in their transformation journey. She has mentored school leaders across the country as a part of India's School Leadership Institute and also taught primary students in Mumbai as a part of her 2-year Teach for India fellowship. Apart from this, Ritika is passionate about environment protection and leads a zero waste lifestyle. I'm sure, given what Ritika's experience has been in the academic domain, you will learn a lot of insights from this session. And without much ado, Ritika, welcome to the session.
Thanks so much for that kind introduction, Sneha. I think if you ask me very honestly, I'm still a teacher at heart, and that's the very reason why I wanted to do this session. And I'm really hoping for all of you who've joined us today, this is going to be like a class, right? So I'll be the teacher today, but I do hope that all of you will also be students and do a lot of interaction through this session. But before I go ahead, I actually would want to add in a little more to what Sneha shared about Leadership Boulevard and what we do. So we started as an organization about 11 years ago with 4 of our own schools. And for the last 6 years, we've been working with partner schools across country. This means schools that we're providing an integrated solution to. And this was actually, LEAD was actually started by Sumit and Smita and is still headed by both of them, very passionate educators at heart. Also, this year, what has been really a big news for all of us has been taking over the Pearson K-12 business. We now have Pearson India as part of the Leadership Boulevard portfolio. So that's a little bit about LEAD and Leadership Boulevard, what we've been doing all this while. But just to reiterate, our end goal is students, right? Ensuring that students get excellent and accessible education wherever they might be across country. And we really believe in working with schools of India and of Bharat. So moving ahead, I'm actually going to start this session with a question for all of you. So what are some of the things that teachers do daily? All of you, I'm sure, are coming from schools, or I saw some of you are actually training teachers, working with teachers, some of your school owners, principals, academic coordinators, some of your teachers yourselves, right? So what are some of the tasks or things that teachers do on a daily basis? If you can put that in the chat box. Yeah, upskilling yourself. Okay, what else? Planning, arranging substitution. Definitely, I think it's one of the most difficult jobs every day. Innovating, planning lessons, developing curriculum, and actually teaching in the classrooms. All right, what other tasks do teachers do on a daily basis? I'm really glad to hear Gurjeet ma'am mentioning that teachers do reflection, right? Very important part of the job, but very rarely do we get a chance to do that. Execution of lessons, understanding the concept ourselves first and then actually explaining it to the students, planning activities, creating assessments, running assemblies, annual days, PTM, sports days, so much, right? There's so many things that we do as teachers. So just highlighting a few of the things that you do on a daily basis. Of course, planning lessons, ensuring that students are learning and are interactive in classrooms, developing teaching learning material, researching, right, what is new out there so that we can keep ourselves updated and hence our students, grade assessments. That is not all, actually. There's a lot more that we do as teachers, right? Evaluating and overseeing exams, marks entry. Massive task, I think, for all of us, figuring out how our students have done. Supporting our students. We know that there are always these 4 or 5 kids in the class who need extra help. A lot of administrative tasks, especially taking attendance, maintaining registers, obviously focusing on our own professional growth, right? Moving forward with times and continuing this constantly, right? So of all the things that you just heard from me and the ones that you've mentioned in the chat, which of these do you think actually impact student learning? What impacts your students directly, right? So many tasks that you do, but of all these things, what are some of the tasks that really impact your students? Yes, classroom environment, right? Really important how we do that. How you really teach in the class makes a huge difference. Yeah, having impartial behavior, having certain strategies in place to make sure that, we are giving equal opportunity to all students in the classroom, attention to all of our students, ensuring that they all are learning no matter what they're struggling with, communication and coordination between teacher and student, involvement of students. Yeah, teaching in a way that they want to learn or they can learn. Making learning effective and student-centric, positive encouragement, yeah, taking care of their learning styles and our delivery styles according to that. All right, there are a lot of things that impact student learning, right? That a lot of you've mentioned and I've shared. And which of these tasks do you think can be made easy by using technology? Can we make student-centric learning easy by technology? Can we ensure that our planning, and delivery styles, all of this, providing learning resources, do you think that all of this can be made easy by technology? I'm so glad to see Shiva sir has said 100%, like all of these tasks, right? And I absolutely agree. The answer is that yes, all of these tasks actually can be made very, very easy with the use of technology. So let's look at a little more on this, right? So some of you mentioned in the beginning that teachers have to upgrade themselves through reflection, be innovative. Any teacher who's able to figure out, using technology, especially now in the world where we're talking of AI, chat, GPT and whatnot, and, all of these things that are taking forward, the teachers who are able to decode this, who are able to figure this out are actually great teacher leaders. And where does this really begin from, right? Where does this start from? Let's look at that. All right, I'm going to actually give you all 10 seconds to read this quote and I'll share why I'm bringing this up. This is one of my favorite quotes by an educator called John Dewey. And he says, if we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of a tomorrow. Right? A lot of research says that we all as educators, as teachers, teach the way we were taught, which means we're not moving forward. We're not doing what is needed for our students as much as we'd like to. I'm sure there are pockets where this is happening. There are a lot of schools where this is still not happening because we need to keep up with times. We need to stay innovative. We need to use technology. There's so much we need to do. But we're still stuck somewhere in the traditional forms of teaching in the way we were taught. But today's children don't actually learn like that, right? We need to change this for our children. So let's look at what do we need to do first, right? To become a great teacher leader. What do we need to do first? Very simply, lead yourself. Any leadership actually begins by leading yourself. That is really important. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. You need to begin, change begins at home, right? We've all heard that. So it's very important that we begin by leading ourselves. And I'll get into that in a minute as to what that really means. But along with that, leading others. And there are two stakeholders whom we impact directly. Can all of you put in the chat box who are the two stakeholders or two people we impact directly? Students, definitely. Who are the others? Parents. I'm so glad all of you have started mentioning the right answers for this. Definitely parents, right? Without them knowing and being happy about how their students are performing, how their children are performing in schools, we can't really do much. We need to be a partner with them in making things happen. And so when it comes to leading parents or yourself, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind, right? So let's begin by leading ourselves. What does that really mean? And why I'm bringing this up is also because a lot of times in giving to our students, taking care of parents, doing what is needed for our peers, we forget ourselves as teachers. And it's very, very important that we remind ourselves that, hey, we are also professionals. We're also humans. We need to know how to balance ourselves, how to lead ourselves, how to take care of ourselves. So I'm actually going to talk about some of the things that we need to do to lead ourselves first, right? The very first being balancing time, energy, and commitments. Gone are the days when, people used to think that teaching means 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock job and you're done. I'm sure that's not the case anymore, right? How many of you actually are not able to switch off from the work? If you can give me a hands up, I'm sure you can see it on the reactions. You can give me a hands up or a thumbs up. You are not able to switch off from work, right? Even if it's after 2 o'clock, even if it's after 6 o'clock and you are home, you still have notebooks to correct, send information to parents, plan for the next day, put things together, all of that, right? So it's not a very basic 6-hour, 8-hour job anymore. Teaching is a lot more. It's a huge commitment. And hence, it's very important that we balance our time, we balance our energy, and we also see how to manage all of our commitments, right, as teachers. So that's the first bit of taking care of leading ourselves. Second, being flexibility. So many things and get thrown at us as educators every day, challenges that we didn't see the day before, surprises. So it's very important that we are flexible in dealing with all of that, and of course have a critical mindset when it comes to dealing with these things. Think what is going to create an impact, think of our students, which we do, I think, all the time, and then solve for things and adopt a growth mindset. I'm sure a lot of you keep getting feedback. There is a lot of new things that you're constantly learning, and that can only be done if you operate from a growth mindset, right? Opposite of a fixed mindset. A growth mindset basically emphasizes that you learn new things, you listen to feedback, you do what is needed to continuously improve yourself and improve what is happening around you. So adopting a growth mindset is really important. Constantly training ourselves. This could be sessions online, in-person trainings that the school is doing, or opportunities outside school that we keep looking for to learn new things, right? And being innovative and creative. We know if we don't do this, our students in classroom will get bored, or we ourselves will get bored of doing the same thing repeatedly. So have to be innovative and creative in our work every day. The other bit of leading ourselves is also 21st century skills. Just as students have 21st century skills, so do teachers, right? Teachers impact students directly. It's very important that we also follow through with the 21st century skills. And I'm going to quickly explain some of these just for clarity because we've covered some of them already, right? Effective communication. Very important that what we're sharing, how we're sharing lands well on the people we're working with, especially students and parents. Adaptability, we spoke about flexibility. Technology proficiency, right? Technological proficiency is supremely important in today's day and age. Without that, we'll just become traditional teachers, not really teaching the children of future, but teaching children of past. Leadership skills, problem solving, emotional intelligence. I'm very sure that if people look back at school times, they don't remember subjects, they don't remember classrooms. What they remember are their teachers, right? I'm sure all of you do the same. When you think back of school, you remember your teachers. And why do you remember teachers? Because you have an emotional bond with them. Hence, emotional intelligence is really important for teachers to understand their students. Instructional design, how do our learners really learn, right? Designing for that versus I wanted to teach a certain way, I've done it. I don't care if the students really understood it. Doesn't work like that anymore, right? We have to make learning fun. Critical thinking, of course, time management, and innovation. So these are some of the skills that teachers really need in the 21st century. Let's look at leading parents now. So we've learned about leading ourselves. When it comes to leading parents, I actually first want to ask a question. How many of you are parents yourselves? Can you put a me in the chat box? If any of you are parents, I'm sure quite a few of you are parents yourselves. Wow, I see a lot of you putting in a me, which basically means you yourselves are parents. So you understand, right? When parents come to you, when they approach you as a teacher, as a principal, as a coordinator, as an owner, that I have some expectation from you regarding my child. So you really have to operate from empathy, put yourselves in their shoes and understand why is the parent worried, why are they concerned, why are they curious? A lot of parents are very curious to know what exactly is their child learning in school. So it's very important that we operate from empathy. Second is communicating very well with them, ensuring that their questions are answered. In fact, keeping them abreast of what is happening in the school in advance. I'm sure a lot of you send in information to parents in advance, right? Like, this is what's going to be taught in this unit or in this chapter. This is what's going to come in exams. This is when we have annual day, sports day. Here are some instructions, expectations. So having that communication going, but also using communication to help them learn what their child is doing in classrooms, right? So doing student-led conferences, bringing parents in for open days, PTMs, so that they actually see their children doing what is needed. Being open to feedback. I think this is very important. A lot of times schools end up, or teachers end up hearing this at the end of the year when the parent says, my child didn't really learn anything, I'm moving schools. And I'm sure that's very, very heartbreaking after years of toiling and working hard with that child. So it's very important that we're open to feedback and we get this feedback, consistently and constantly from parents to understand where they are with their children. And of course, persuasion and influencing. Please know that you're a partner when it comes to the child's learning, right? As much as the parent is responsible, so are you. It's not either or. It's not like just the teacher is responsible for the child's growth or only the parent is. Both you and the parent have to work together hand in hand to make things happen for the child and influence the child and support them in school as well as at home, right? So for leading parents, these 4 things are really important. Now let's look at our next stakeholder, right? When it comes to leading students, what are some of the things that we need to keep in mind? Definitely move away from rote learning and focus on deep understanding. Google can give all the information children need today. It's not at all difficult. Some of them even now know how to use ChatGPT and so many other AI platforms. Getting information is not tough. What to do with that information is really important for our students. And hence, working with them on building deep understanding of concepts is what we all need to focus as educators. Multimodal learning, and we'll think about and talk about this in a bit. Of course, foundational skills, numeracy and literacy both are needed for our students today, and having assessments that are actually holistic in nature. So we'll talk about all of these things in a little more depth in a minute. Right, so what does NCF recommend to teacher leaders, right? So many of us have heard of this term. Actually, why don't we start with hearing from all of you? What is the full form of NCF? Can you put that in the chat box? I'm sure everybody knows this, but just for my knowledge to see how many people not just know the term NCF, but actually know the full form of it. Fantastic, right? National Curriculum Framework. What we want is that we want our children to be learning certain things at certain age, at certain point in times, and curriculum is a whole of that. So what does the National Curriculum Framework recommend for our teachers to do? There are 8 specific things that it identifies with and says that teachers must do to become great teacher leaders. First one, of course, as I mentioned earlier, building deep understanding for students and moving away from rote learning. Second being holistic and experiential pedagogy. Right? I'll give you a crazy example on this that I heard actually from a teacher educator. And I asked her, what do you understand by experiential pedagogy? She said, if I had to give my students a cycle, I can't give them a book and say, read the book, learn how to ride the cycle. I need them to experience how to do it, and only then they will learn it. And to me, that is experiential pedagogy, right? When they really experience something and learn from that versus just having theoretical knowledge of it. Third, age-appropriate and learning goals. Of course, we can't expect students who are in pre-primary grades to be learning in the same abstract way that middle school students do or some of the upper primary students do. There needs to be a way for helping them learn. Focusing on, of course, their literacy and numeracy skills, because without that, without knowing math, very basic stuff, logic, knowing language, they will not be able to learn other subjects. Multimodal learning for different types of learners. Of course, competency-based holistic assessments, learning and development to become better teachers. And we'll talk about that also because this is part of becoming a teacher leader and leading self. And personalized support to students, right? Gone are the days where we taught an average lesson plan. What do we do to support students? So we look into that. So let's begin with the first one, right? 5 C's. Very simple, connected to previous learning. Anytime we build learning for students, it has to be connected with the past. So for example, if you're teaching multiplication, students need to know repeated addition or addition rather, right? Without knowing the basics, they can't move forward. Connected to life. A lot of times we teach them abstract methods, abstract things, but we don't know the use of that and we don't help them learn that, especially with math, right? For the longest time, I did not know what was the purpose of learning algebraic expressions up until one day someone actually sat me down and showed me the graphical representation. And this was in my adult age. So it's very important that whatever learning children are doing, it's connected to their life. They know the purpose of it. Catering to all learners. So we have different types of learners, and we'll talk about those in the next slide. Concentric learning. Can any of you take a guess? What does concentric learning mean? A wild guess. What does concentric learning mean?
Attendees, you can use the little chat box on your screen. You can pour in your answers.
Yeah, related to
We're getting
concept.
answers, Ritika.
Okay. Yeah, revisiting the concept in a higher form as child goes from grade to grade. Okay. Yeah, very close. So concentric learning very basically means that the learning goes from the teacher to the student, right? So there are ways of doing that, and I'll talk about it in a minute. Contextual, of course, we don't want students to be learning things that are way away from their natural background, where they come from. If it's not contextualized, if it's not about their own surroundings, they'll not be able to really relate to that, especially in the early grades, right? So what does concentric mean? Let's look at that. So before that, I'm going to just quickly touch upon, I did speak about the 21st century skills for teachers. I'm going to now speak about the 21st century skills that students need. And right, like you are the ones who are impacting them. So communication, thinking skills, conceptual understanding, exposure, and collaboration. These 5 skills are the shortened version. There is a lot many more things that students need to know today. And we know that, this is what the future jobs are going to be all about. I'm sure when all of us were in school, the only job roles that were available to us in future were becoming an engineer, becoming a doctor, well, lawyer, and if nothing else, you'd become a teacher, right? But today's students don't think like that. They have so many opportunities. I think I was just most surprised a few years ago when one of the students that I taught, has now become a YouTuber and an influencer. And I didn't even know that, a career path like that really existed for students, but that's where the future is going. So let's look at what holistic and experiential learning means, right? So I was talking about concentric learning. If you see on the right of the screen, you'll see teacher-led group practice, individual practice. This exactly is what concentric learning is, where the teacher does something, we do it with the students, and then the students do it independently. This basically means that the learning has been transferred from the adult in the classroom or the teacher in the classroom to the student in a 3-step format. As a teacher, I demonstrate certain things, I explain certain things, then that moves on to being practiced with students, with their peers, and then finally the students do it independently. And of course, activity-based learning is extremely important. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the term playway method, right? But how many of us really follow through with that? We know that this is important. We'd love to teach like that in classrooms, but sometimes we actually give up on that and go back to theory, right? And teach in the typical ways that we were teaching in. So let's look at this question, right? Especially for pre-primary classes. Do you think is it okay if we skip the field trip to a vegetable market? Suppose students in their chapter or in their unit in pre-primary are learning about vegetables and fruits, and there is a plan to go to the field trip. But we think, no, it's okay, let's not do it. Do you think it's a good idea to skip that? Okay, great. I see a lot of people putting no, right? So then how will this really help the child? How will going to a field trip to a vegetable market really help the child? I can show them the book. I can tell them about, vegetables and fruits by reading from the book. So how is it helpful to go to the market? Yeah, experiential learning. Okay. They can relate what they're actually learning in classroom. It's first-hand experience, real life connection. Yeah, it leaves a long-lasting impact. I'm sure a lot of us have learned history by actually going to historical trips, monuments, etc., back in school at times, right? And I'm sure those trips, while they were a lot of fun to go out with friends, but also left a lasting impression on many of us. Hence, things like field trips are really, really important for our students. So if you're not planning these, Please start planning them. If you have these in your plan, and sometimes you feel that we can skip it, it's all right. Don't operate from that, right? Have a growth mindset. See how you can make this happen for your students. All right. Let's also look at how NCF has divided the whole, learning journey of a child. So they've actually done a 5+3+3+4. I'm sure a lot of you would have come across this, and this is how schools were supposed to be, right? The first 5 years of the child are foundational years. And this is very important because if you don't have a strong foundation, you can't build a building on top of that. So it's very important that in the first 5 years, which is nursery, junior KG, senior KG, or how we call it in some schools, PP1, PP2, right? Those 3 years plus grade 1 and 2 are extremely important years. These are years where you will bring in a lot of, activities in classrooms, get the kids to, move around, do a lot of things with their hands, by watching, by listening, so that you ensure that they are completely engrossed in their learning. As they move up, grades 3 to 5, right? 3 years of their preparatory years. These are very important where you continue with the interaction in class, a lot of peer group learning, supporting students with the help of their partners, ensuring that, somebody constantly looks at them, gets them in groups and do things, do a lot of activity here as well, right? So that whatever they have done in their foundational years, that learning continues for them. Of course, as they move to middle school, which is grade 6, 7, and 8, the activity based learning becomes slightly lesser. However, in science and in math, as much as possible, please continue to do so. I know that a lot of schools tend to skip on it, trying to save time. Sometimes we feel that, oh, the curriculum will not get over if we don't do this well. But remember, if there is no deep conceptual knowledge understanding, the student will, mug up things and of course will not really enjoy. And this is why a lot of us, and I'm sure many people on this in this session also would have felt that as you get to grade 11 and 12, even if you wanted to become somebody in the science space, you start losing interest because you learned things and not really learned and loved them for the joy of learning. And of course, after that, grades 9 to 12 is multidisciplinary. Students start moving into directions of certain subjects that they want to really ace at. Right? So for each sub-school, if you notice, right, the years, it's very important that we keep in mind how children learn in those specific years, and the pedagogy or how teachers teach in the classroom changes. And that is why a great teacher leader needs to ensure that this is done well. This is the age group of students that you're teaching. This, I'm sure, is something that all of you do in schools, but it's extremely important. The challenge is that we look at, foundational literacy and math logic or math as, abstract concepts as well. However, for learning any language, please remember, I'm sure all of you have heard of this concept of LSRW, right? But LSRW actually basically means that there are two aspects to learning a language. There is an input, there is an output. While reading and listening is actually input, speaking and writing are output. So whenever you're planning for pre-primary, right, for literacy, foundational literacy skills, it's important that we keep in mind both the input as well as output and balance these to give pre-primary students enough time. And I will come to a question on this because this is something I've seen, happening in a lot of schools. But just reiterating that even when it comes to math, do a lot of hands-on with students. For them, if you in pre-primary grades, in early years, if you start writing 4+2, it's not going to really make a difference. Actually, let me do this as an activity with all of you. Transform yourself and think if you were a child who's about age 4, in nursery or junior KG classroom, and I should write down the number 4. Now, I know as an adult that that's number 4, but for you, what does it mean? You're a 4-year-old child in grade nursery or JKG. The teacher has written number 4 on the board as the digit. What does it mean to you? Can you put that in the chat box? What does that mean for you? It's a symbol, just a line. Okay, what else? Strokes. Yeah, it really holds no meaning, right? It's a drawing my teacher made on the board. It holds no value for me unless I actually, as a teacher, teach the student how to count something with physical material. Then the child is able to make connection of that symbol with something that's in my hands. Otherwise, it really holds no value for me. You can teach me 4 like this, or you can teach me 4 in Japanese, or you can teach me 4 in any other language. It's still 4, but it holds no meaning for me unless I quantify it. So please make sure when you're planning for maths, you do take care of these things. And that's something that NCF has really, really pushed for now. Let's actually look at a question, right? So I did see a lot of answers in the chat box. In pre-primary curriculum, a lot of us believe that writing, remembering numbers, spellings is enough, right? So what do we need more? If you're already doing writing, if you're already getting students to mug up numbers and rote learn spellings, that is enough, right? Do you think firstly that is enough? Just put a yes and no if you think that is enough or no. I see most of you have said a no, right? Yeah, it's not enough. So for those of you who have said a yes, let's actually help understand what is it that we need more. If you're writing no, right, this is not enough. Just learning numbers, all of this is not enough. What more do we need? Yeah, Chavi ma'am has mentioned activities are needed, things related to their daily life is needed, making it pragmatic. Gurjeet ma'am, if you can explain a little more on that. Yeah, you need to get students to enjoy the concepts. It just can't be, let's just rote learn all the numbers, let's just, mug up spellings and then just write it down in the exam. For then, kids will not really be building on critical thinking skills. They'll not really be learning anything new. So it's very important that in pre-primary, you go beyond this, right? And some of you have mentioned the answers of what can be done, but I would recommend highly that, build experiential learning, go from being, keeping the student in the center and then moving to things outside. So start helping them by learning about themselves, about their family, and then move to things, that can be about the planet, that can be about the city that they live in, beyond classroom and then beyond school. Right. So go from keeping the student in the center all the way to helping them learn about the world that they're in. All right. The one other thing that NCF really focuses on is multimodal. And where did this come from? Have you heard of the term visual, auditory, kinesthetic? And if yes, can you help me with the meaning of what do you mean by visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? Any one of the words that you might have heard that learners today are, based on this VAC model. So what does visual mean? What does auditory mean? What does kinesthetic mean? Okay, visual is see and learn. Yeah, it's actually now a VARK model, VARK. Auditory is they relate to when they listen to. They learn better when they see. Yeah. Right. So we have mostly in schools learners today who are visual, who are auditory, who are kinesthetic. Right. Visual learners learn by seeing things. Auditory learners are learners who learn by listening to things. And kinesthetic learners are learners who learn by doing activities, really engaging with some physical material. And that's what helps them, learn. So we have all kinds of students in our classroom, right? We can't say that, oh, all my students in my class of SKG1 are kids who are visual learners. If I just put on something on the blackboard or I show them a chart, they learn by that. Not necessarily. Hence, it's important that our classrooms become smart classrooms. We use a lot of activities, hands-on learning. And of course, we have digital mediums for helping them learn, not just in school, but also at home so that parents can support them, right? We spoke about parents being partners in the learning. This is where it's important that they're also aware and they're also supporting the child. Let's look at assessments, right? These are a very important aspect. While a lot of people feel that, oh, test is just to find out how much the children learned, it's not just that. It's actually also helping with teachers getting feedback on how they learn, how their teaching has landed on the student. I don't know if the students learned. I conduct an assessment and I find out that, hey, my students have not learned certain things very well. Or in my class of 30 students, there are 5 students who have not learned a particular concept. So it's very important that we look at assessments from a different angle of getting feedback for teachers as support. I'm not saying that this is a way to monitor teachers at all or supervise teachers at all. I'm saying that this helps teachers know their students better so that they're able to support them, do remediation wherever there is a gap for the students, right? So it's very important that we look at assessments from a space for children to actually put down their learning, test their application of concepts, and of course, use it as feedback for remediation and covering gaps. And of course, in leading self, as NCF also mentions, it's important that teachers look at training and mentoring constantly. Training could be outside, mentoring could be from your own school coordinators, principals, or even sometimes school owners who come with a very great bent towards learning and development. So ensuring that you get the mentoring support from them, ensuring that you have plans ready. A lot of you mentioned at the beginning of the session, and I asked, what are some of the tasks that you do constantly, right? Lesson planning is one aspect of it. And of course, having a very, very solid teaching learning space in the classroom. But let's look at what NCF has to say for students' personalized learning. We can't have a classroom today where we teach one lesson plan, works for all students. Doesn't happen, right? Of a classroom of 35, 40 students, you always have children who learn at an average. You teach a plan, you do something, some of them get it. Then you have students who are really smart, who want to do more, who quickly finish writing in classroom and then start troubling other children, or are the first ones to put up their hands, and then they get pulled back if they're not given more. And of course, you have children in classroom who are struggling, who are looking outside the window, who are not very sure what is going on and feel disconnected with the class. So it's important that in order to support every student in class, we do various things, right? Having bridge courses, especially after pandemic, we know that a lot of children came back with learning gaps, and bridge course is something that helps schools. Level-based learning, which means wherever the child is, supporting them, especially in English skills from that, ensuring that, we also look at their wellness. Especially in grade 10, we know that a lot of children are very, very stressed out being bored here. And we need to ensure that at that age, with the changes that they're also going through physically and mentally and emotionally, we provide them the support that they require, and ensure that there is remedials basis what the child has learned or not learned in the classroom, and teacher supports accordingly, and pull in parents for supporting at home as well. So all of these things actually help in providing personalized learning for students and ensuring they get the support that they really need as an individual and not just as a class. So how does LEAD ensure that our teachers become great teacher leaders? I mentioned earlier that we've been doing this for almost 11 years. We started with 4 of our own schools at LEAD. We currently work with about 3,000 plus schools across country. And we realized in this journey that there are some things that we need to do to support the teachers very well. The very reason why LEAD actually came into existence was because we realized that if we want to impact children, then the best way to do that is through the teachers, right? They have the most influence. They're the ones who are interacting with children every day. And so it's very important that we give them all the support that they require. So let's look at what are the things that we are doing currently. I spoke about the structure that NCF, has for teachers that they've put out, and they've said that, for students, at what level, what should the child be learning? So what have we done at LEAD for that? We've ensured that, our students are learning in a lot of great depth. All those things that they're learning is through multidisciplinary and multimodal learning. We're also ensuring that there are a lot of activities that children do, irrespective of what subject they're learning. So for example, in math, we do something called as a CPA strategy, right? This is concrete, pictorial, abstract. So children learn with some concrete material in their hand, they learn pictorially, and then they move on to an abstract method and don't do 4+2 directly. We actually get them to count things, to understand quantification, and then move into that. And this is done all the way from pre-primary to almost early middle school, right, till grade 6. When it comes to EVS, we actually teach EVS by doing learning by doing. So science cannot be learned in a boring theory way, right? You read the chapter, you understand, you think you understand, and then you go to the assessment. So we don't teach like that. What we want is our children to get a lot of hands-on practice and then go use that, understand the concept in depth, and use it for being assessed in the exams. So that's what we want for our students. And that's why each grade level, we have figured what is the right methodology for teaching them. And that's what our lesson plans contain. In pre-primary or early foundational years, right, the first 5 years, there are a couple of things that we've made sure we do. So there are these learning goals that the Lakshya Mission has, and these are very, very important. These fall under the national mission, and CBSE, NCRT, everybody has set these out, saying that this is what each grade level child should be able to learn before they move up. So what have we done at LEAD? We've ensured all of our LOs and LIs, which is our learning outcomes, learning indicators, or the objectives basically that students learn in the classroom. We cover everything that is mentioned and we're aligned to that. So what this has led to is our students are ready, have a head start in comparison to a lot of students in other schools across country. They're already ready for moving forward faster than others, right? Our curriculum is absolutely aligned to what NCF and Laksh goals are asking for. Also, in terms of early years, there are certain developmental goals, right, that NCF has set out. One being taking care of the child's health and well-being. So in our daily lesson plans at pre-primary level, we're ensuring that, we do morning routine, yoga and physical education for students. We know for pre-primary students, it's extremely important that we take care of their physical development, cognitive development, social emotional development, and of course, daily learning. So we want to make sure that, all of this is covered in their daily learning. Second being effective communicators. So we do an early literacy program called Early ELGA as part of pre-primary. And of course, we do a lot of creative art. We know that pre-primary kids absolutely love that, and it's very important for their growth. And we also ensure that within the classrooms, they're very connected with their environment. They're learning things by actually doing stuff hands-on. So our early EVS and Math Logic curriculum is designed keeping these things in mind. These are some more things that, the NCF has put out that children must learn in foundational years. And this is, again, the first 5 years of schooling, right? So pre-primary to grade 2. Oral language development, reading comprehension, writing, vocabulary, coding. This is something that is very, very important. Phonological awareness and reading fluency, right? So if children know language really well, that is how they'll be able to perform in other subjects. So if my English is not great, and most of our schools being now, having English as a medium for teaching, I'm sure that kids can't do well in other subjects. Even math is actually taught in English. So, kids are not able to do much if their English language is not very, very strong or their literacy skills are not strong. Actually, let me ask you a quick question. In math, what is that one question that children don't do? They leave it out completely. They avoid doing. There's one question in math across, at least in primary grades, that children are not able to answer very comfortably. Oh yeah, Akshata ma'am has answered. Yeah, Manisha ma'am, word problems, story sums, right? Why are they not able to do that? Because this requires 2 skills for the child. One is reading fluency, 2 is comprehension, and then the third skill of math finding, which is the right operation. So it's very important that children have the reading ability and comprehension ability to first read the question, understand the question, only then they can move to doing operations. Hence, we do a lot of focus, put a lot of focus in literacy skills. We have a special program called ELGA, English Language and General Awareness, in which we ensure that children are doing on a daily basis reading, listening, writing, speaking. And of course, grammar, phonics, and whole words are the foundation of this program. So all students across LEAD schools every morning for 2 hours are actually studying ELGA, and this helps in building their literacy skills. The other program that we really emphasize on and has worked really well for us is coding and computational skills. This is another thing that's really important for our students. We know that in future, this is going to be a big skill that all students must have. So we've started early with grade 1 itself. All students across, again, LEAD schools are actually doing coding from grade 1 itself. We start very simple. We don't make it complicated for our students, but we want them to know coding very well by the time they move to middle school. Here are certain foundational numeracy topics that NCF emphasizes on, right? Pre-number concepts, operations, spatial and shapes, right? Understanding. I think this is very important. A lot of us even today don't really understand it. I'll give you a quick example of this. A lot of times, when you're traveling by flight, let's say, we're not able to figure out whether a bag will fit into the overhead compartment or not. Or if we are placing things in a room, we don't know how much of space will be covered and how much will be left open. This is spatial understanding. This is a skill as well. A lot of time children are not able to figure this out. Why? Because they've not been exposed to this skill early on, and that's why that build is not there. So we do focus on things like these as well: patterns, data handling, of course, mathematical communication, measurement. We've ensured that the pre-primary program and the early primary math program covers all of this for our students. NCF also emphasizes on experiential learning, as I shared earlier. And of course, it emphasizes that children learn about Indian culture and context and have value-based education, a lot of ethics, and of course, AI, computational thinking, being a global citizen, 21st century skills, and environment education. With the climate change, climate crisis coming in, this is another big thing that NCF has brought in this year. So we've ensured that all of the subjects, all of the classes, programs that students go through cover for these things, right? So whether it is arts and activity in pre-primary or having themes that are based on all of these topics, or ensuring that values are actually part of the ELGA program and the EVS programs that students study, or coding and computational skills, right? We're ensuring that anything and everything that the NCF has highlighted is covered through the program at LEAD. Let's look at a few examples for this. So art-based learning or art-integrated learning is something that has been brought in. We've ensured that our lesson plans, for example, in the first example, you can see the children are being taught pattern. And through this, they're actually doing a thumbprint to understand pattern. To learn the concept of symmetry, they're actually made of flower with their paper so that they there is art. Art is integrated in the way they learn a concept. And in middle school also, we've ensured that themes like sports, etc., are brought in whatever the students are learning. In fact, some of our math units are just based on sports and cricket and things like that completely. We were talking about values, leadership, right, and ethics being part of learning for students. Children don't learn moral values and education the way we used to, right? I'm very sure most of us as educators, back in the day when we were in school, we actually had a book. At least I remember every Friday, 45 minutes, we would have a value or moral education class. We would read a story, discuss the story, and that's about it, right? But values such as gratitude, growth mindset, all of these things, integrity, cannot be taught just through one class anymore. Children don't learn like that, right? These have to be imbibed very early on in them, have to become part of them. They learn in a way that it's, there, but no one's really like sitting through and explaining them each value. But it's part of their daily learning, and, slowly it gets imbibed in who they are. So these are part of the ELGA program as well as the the pre-primary program that we do. We ensure that our children understand some of these values. All right. Also on coding and computational skills, I mentioned earlier, this is through and through from grade 1 to grade 8. We do want our students to actually become technology creators and not technology consumers, right? All of us are today technology consumers. We're not creators. But for the future generation, it's important to become creators and not just consumers. So our coding and computational skills CCS program has been designed in a way that we focus on moving them and building them, helping them build this skill very, very well. And of course, we want our students to become global citizens. We don't want them to think that they're just, going to school because they have to learn certain subjects, but they actually understand the value of these things. I'm sure all of us want our children to become responsible citizens of the country. And for that, it's important that all of this is part of their daily learning and not just one-off chapter here and there that they study. I'll quickly talk about how we're covering assessments at LEAD. So we've ensured that, all of our assessments are actually based on competencies that students are learning in classrooms, and the learning goes beyond just regular chapters and concepts that they're doing, right? There's a lot of mock assessments that our students do, especially in grades 9 and 10, because we know that unless they really practice those in school, they won't be able to deliver in the final exam. So a lot of hands-on practice, ensuring that teachers know, where are they lacking, provide the remediation support to them. And in order to ensure that children are practicing at home. So you, like I said earlier, right, you always have these students who want to do more and don't want to be stagnated by the rest of the class. So we have practice tests for such students. We also have a thing called practice with friends, where they can challenge their friends and do quizzes at home, because we do not want them to look at things beyond. We want them to focus and channelize all of their efforts towards learning things. So all of these things are provided on the student app as well, so that students can learn at home and you can make the parent a partner. I'm going to quickly show you some examples of competency-based assessments. And these are the mock assessments that we provide to grades 9 and 10. We earlier spoke about leading ourselves as teachers. I know teacher training is a big deal, but The one way I've seen teachers always getting trained, and I think it's one of the most boring ways, is by sitting for, a week of training at the beginning of the year. How many of you have actually or still doing this, where you sit for 1 week of training at the beginning of the academic year or in the summer vacation, you think you're ready to teach the whole year? If you can raise your hand. Yeah, a lot of us do this, right? Where someone will come, an external trainer will come, or we will train our teachers as school educators. And, we think that that's all the training that's needed. Actually, training for teachers is no more like that. I'm sure you all have come across OTT platforms, right? Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hotstar and whatnot. What have they done? They've changed the way we watch movies today, or we watch shows today. It's at the click of a button. When I am free, when I have the time, when I'm ready to watch something, when I want to watch something. I think teacher training also needs to flip like that. If I have to teach phonics tomorrow in classroom, then I should be able to learn that today. Why should I learn it in the month of April when I'm actually going to deliver it only in the month of October, right? So learning for a teacher has to be very hands-on, available at a click, at a point where she wants this, right? And she's actually going to be using it. Otherwise, we know, it's just as students learn so much curriculum but don't remember things. It's the same with teachers. We attend so many trainings, and by the time we reach classroom to actually implement it, we don't remember what was, taught to us many, many months ago. So Netflix model of learning, or Netflix model of doing teacher training is what is really important nowadays, right? If students are changing, so are teachers. And that's why at LEAD, what we do is we provide an online academy which has a lot of teacher videos and a lot of resources for teachers to use in the classroom. Watch these the day before you're going to actually go into the classroom, a couple of days before, practice it, then go and teach, right? And that's the right way to do teacher training, not really doing this at the beginning of the year. Also, the one big thing NCF has brought up is actually how do you support children who are gifted, right? Children who want to do more, children who need to get more exposure. And so at LEAD, what we started doing is, apart from providing a bridge course to ensure that students catch up on their learning, we do something called as LEAD Championships. This is actually going on. We've just launched for 2023. We've just launched the LEAD Championships 3 days back. This is an inter-school competition for all LEAD schools across country. Last year, we had 80,000 children participate in this, and we have a grand event at the end of it all, where the top kids in every category come together in a city and do a performance on stage. And this has, helped us really realize that, so many children out there don't get this exposure that easily, but we do want to provide them. We, of course, do a lot of master classes where we have people like Sunil Gavaskar, who came in and taught effective communication to our students, or R. Madhavan as an actor came in and taught all of our students about personality development. So we do a lot of master classes. We also ensure that schools do student-led conferences. This is a conference led by students, not by teachers. This is where parents come in and students actually showcase to them what are some of the things that they've been learning in classrooms. For all the curious parents, and we said leading parents is a big thing, this is the space to bring them in, show them, and help them acknowledge what their children are really doing in classrooms, right? And build a relationship with parents. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have the student app through which you can constantly send things to students to do at home, connect with parents, and also get them to practice with friends, do quizzes, etc. at home. So before I end this session, I'm going to quickly ask you to put down 2 learnings from today's session, right? And just focus on what is it that you can do today to transform yourself from being a teacher to a teacher leader, right? So 2 key learnings that you had, if you can put that in the chat box. I'll also answer a few quick questions. Okay, SLC, Aruna ma'am has asked. Aruna ma'am, SLC is student-led conference. This is a conference where children showcase all of the things that they have learned. They put up activities, they explain the concepts to parents. So parents come in, students actually showcase their learning. They will also share all the materials that they have created in classroom. Basically, the idea is during the student-led conference, students become teachers to their parents, and parents become children who are learning that day.
Ritika, there's someone who has asked a very interesting question. It says, what can we do for teachers to keep the teachers motivated?
Wow, this is okay. If you personally ask me, there are majorly two things that you must do. One is, as we are empathetic towards our students and parents, if you are a school leader, please make sure that you show a lot of empathy to your teachers. That's one way of, holding on to them. And when I say empathy, it should come in action, which means do one-on-ones with your teachers, spend time with them, do regular meetings so that they know what is expected of them, and have clarity on that, right? One is that. Second is have very strong school culture. If you notice schools that don't have attrition, right? And I've been to a lot of schools across country and even outside India, which tell me that, my teachers have been here since 15 years, since we started the school. These teachers have never left. Why do you think they never left? They never left because the culture of the school was so good, right? They felt connected. Even if a neighboring school was giving them more salary, they would not move. Why? Because they felt that the school really cared for them. When they were not well, when they had a challenge, the school leader, the principal, the coordinator, their peers stepped in and supported them. When a parent was really angry with them, the school principal stepped in and supported them. Just knowing that their leader really cares for them holds, gives them this feeling of staying connected to the school culture. So having a lot of structures in terms of doing one-on-one conversations with your teachers, regular team meetings, those are in terms of structures, but ensuring that you have great school culture, where you get together, spend time, hear each other out. I think that really helps in motivating teachers.
Ritika, there is also one more very unique question that we have just received. So this person says that they want to shift from IT to the teaching field. So what would you recommend the 5 steps for this person to sort of, make that domain shift, and how they can, integrate their learnings from corporate to a teaching field? I'm taking this question because this is very unique. And I think we are speaking about how to make yourself turn into a super teacher, right? So over to you, Ritika.
I think I actually relate to that question a lot because I actually started my working journey, right, with a corporate. And then I moved to doing the Teach for India Fellowship, where I was teaching 80 students in a municipal school in Bombay. I did not have a B.Ed degree. So there are a lot of fellowships today that are available. And trust me, the skills that you've learned at the corporate space really help, right? Being resilient, problem solving, thinking critically, being empathetic. I'm sure you are towards your client. Here, your client are your students and your peer teachers and parents. So all the skills that you would have learned in the corporate space will actually help you in working in a classroom, right? Just have a lot of patience, and I think everything will work well. But there are a lot of opportunities to do that. Schools which do hire assistant teachers without a B.Ed degree is a space that you can explore. There are fellowships that you can definitely explore for moving in. You can also begin by doing internships with schools and doing a B.Ed simultaneously, because that is a requisite for CBSE schools, not for state board schools. State board schools don't require B.Ed as a requisite. So if you want to directly start teaching in a school, find one in your neighborhood, see if they'd hire you as an assistant teacher, and I'm sure they will help you learn things. Are there more questions in the chat?
Ritika, there's someone who asks, ma'am, how can I become an educator like you? But I actually have an additional question for you. That what were your early learnings when you entered the field of education and you taught and you sort of strategized for school transformation? What were your first, let's say, 2 or 3 mythbusters, and then you picked up from that the major learnings? Because early on when we start, when we get into a particular domain, there are a lot of mythbusters, there are reality checks, and then we sort of acquire our learnings, and then sort of through learnings we start implementing later on into our career. What were your early learnings, Ritika?
I think for me, the very first one, Sneha, was so I had students, who walked in with a gap of learning. So I think the very first thing I learned was that when you walk into a classroom, I thought that students will be fine. I just have to start teaching from that grade's curriculum, and this was grade 2 that I started teaching, and I realized that they have no foundational skills at all. So in 1 year's time, I actually had to teach them for the past 2 years so that they catch up. And I think that is one thing that I've seen, which a lot of schools don't focus on. When kids move up grades, we assume that, okay, if you come into grade 3, you already know everything from grade 1 and 2. We don't spend time, just checking on the students' foundational skills, the gaps that they have. I think that was the first thing I realized about students. The second one being students don't learn in the same way. They all learn very, very differently. So I had kids in my class who, because their knowledge levels were lower than many others, they needed someone to really focus one-on-one with them. So I'd spend my lunchtime, after school hours, before school hours, working with them individually because they needed that for the first quarter. After that, they caught up, with the other students and came together. But they needed that support. I also realized that, while some students might do really well in classrooms, they need an emotional support still from the teacher. And so my job, like I shared earlier also, can't be that I come into class, I finish teaching, and I go back home. And my job is done after 2 o'clock. I don't have anything to do. I had to think about a lot of things that I can do for every child. And I'm sure many people in the session are also like that, that you go back home and you think, how do I impact students tomorrow? Today, I could not do X. So I think that was the second challenge I had, and a myth that broke for me. I think also what was really helpful for me was building relationship with parents. That's why I was emphasizing on leading parents so much, because I realized that when I started having conversations with parents, they and I had the same goal for the child. We both wanted the child to learn. We both wanted the child to be happy, to be a confident human being more than anything else, right? Like, they're not scared of raising their hand. They're not scared of asking questions, and they're very curious, and the curiosity has to be taken care of, right? Like, you need to help them learn. So I built that relationship with parents. The minute I did that, I realized that half my problem gets solved with this, because now we are partners in making sure the child is learning. So if I'm giving feedback about the child, the parent is not misunderstanding. If the parent is giving me feedback about what the child is doing in the classroom, I'm not misunderstanding. And we're working together and ensuring that the child learns well. So I think these three things were some of the myths, and they really helped me.
Ritika, your last point being, building a relationship with parents. There is a question on our chat box which says that how to deal with problematic parents. I think, overly emotional parents, how to sort of navigate that situation as a teacher.
Yeah, I think a very simple thing that I learned very early on, especially when I joined LEAD, was in all of our existing, the 4 schools that we have in Maharashtra, right? We have lobbies which have water. Because you've noticed when a parent walks in really angry and upset, and we don't have a space for them to sit down and drink a glass of water, or we don't treat them like we would, treat a guest at home, then the parent gets ruffled a lot. The minute you sit them down and you say, please have this glass of water, calm down, let's have a conversation, right? Parents will realize that, okay, I need to tone down, I need to track back, right? One is just the way we treat parents when they come to school. That's really important. Second is, we have to understand, right? And that's why the point of empathy I brought up. We need to understand that they are not coming in because they are troubled by the school, right? They're troubled by the fact that their child is not learning, or they had an expectation and the child has not delivered on that. And they're blaming the school for it, of course, right? Because they can't blame the child for it. So we need to empathize. We need to listen carefully as to why are they bringing up the problem and what exactly is the problem? Where does it lie? So I think listening empathetically is the second thing that we need to do. And third is communicating very, very effectively. Keep them abreast of what is happening in the classroom. Send them videos and pictures. Tell them what's going to be coming up next. Call them in for an SLC. This I can vouch for, right? I've seen this across LEAD schools. Anytime a school does a student-led conference, in the first quarter of starting, parents come in, they see what their child is learning in the class, they're very happy. Now they're calm, now they're fine, they know exactly, what is the challenge. So I think these 3 things is something that need to be taken care of to ensure that, parents don't feel troubled.
Right. Ritika, we'll take a couple of more questions. Hema ma'am says that some children are not doing their practice tests. I think what they want is some appreciation. What kind of appreciation we can provide them to complete their practice tests on the student app? We are motivating them in the school. However, if LEAD can provide some motivation on the student app. So this is more to do with wellness. Ritika, what do you suggest?
Yeah, I think there are 2 solves to this. One is if you can have a leaderboard in school inside the classroom to say which are the students who've done their practice tests, and you need not put the score down if you don't want to make it too competitive. You can just put down the name of the student and write down completed, or put a star to say these are the kids who have completed. Every time a child finishes their practice test, we put a star in front of their name. Very simple process to do that, right? In terms of the product solve, I can definitely go back to our team, to the technology team, and see if we can add more things to encourage students, right? Sometimes just some motivation from our end, or reading things on the student app really helps the child. So that's something that I can go back and talk to the technology team.
All right. Ritika, there's one more question. Anita ma'am says that she has been facing difficulty in developing reading skills in her primary class. So what strategies should she implement to sort of, enhance the reading skill outcome in her class?
Great. I think there are three things that you must do. One is if students are firstly not able to read, right, you need to build reading vocabulary for them, which means there are phrase lists, Dolch list. You can find these on Google very easily. Download them, have them in classroom, have like a word wall, and do like reading drills with students, right? So let's begin by first familiarizing them with words. So Dolch list and phrase list is what you can find. Put them up as word walls in classroom. Every day, children have to learn 2 words, not more than that. You can do activities like when they're coming into classroom after assembly, there is a word on the door of the classroom. They have to read that word and then walk in, right? So you can begin by first building the reading word vocabulary for students. One is that. Second is anytime you have a free period, make sure that children are not spending that playing around, waiting for a substitute teacher, all of that. You could have a readathon in classrooms, in schools, where you could say that storybooks from library can be used, or every class can have its own mini library and these can be swapped around. So students have to finish reading a certain number of books. Any child who finishes reading those books at the end of the month does like a story summary for all of the other students. And this really builds the love for reading. So once you do that, then you can actually appreciate, acknowledge those children. You can incentivize by giving them badges like Reader of the Month or a certificate. I'm sure parents really love certificates, right? Or actually another book for them to say, hey, you finished reading so many books. This is one from us for you, and sign it, from the teacher's side. Kids really love these things, especially at younger age. That's the second thing. So building love for reading. I think third is, along with reading, doing a lot of writing. So when they are doing reading, they have to, and when I say writing, I don't mean like writing down just summary, but actually drawing. So if they've read something and they found it really interesting, there needs to be like some time given either in a class teacher period or at the end of the day where they draw these things. Younger students are more inclined towards drawing things than writing things. So it's very important that whatever they're reading, you give them some imaginative time to actually sit and draw all of that and display those in the classroom. If they love writing, some of the students you might have, at younger age who love writing, they could write summaries. Those need to be displayed inside the classroom. So that one, it builds a sense of belonging in the classroom. Two, it's also appreciation and acknowledgement for having done that reading. So if you do these 3 steps, we've noticed that a lot of children do pick up reading.
Ritika, there's one more question on how do we take up on slow learning students?
Sure. I think firstly, don't label them as slow learners, right? I know this is a term that we use very often. If you can say that these are students who are struggling in classrooms, that's a much better. And whoever has asked this question, there's no offense to that, but I think it's just how we were also in school, right? Someone would say you're a fast learner, slow learner, all of that. It's not because of that. It's because I have a cognitive challenge at times. For children who are struggling with that, there are 2 things. One is on the medical side, right? If you feel that they have like a cognitive challenge or a learning disability, please get them tested by a psychologist if they're above the age of 6, not below that. Second is in classrooms, please make sure that they get some support from another child. Sometimes the teacher helping in front of the whole class does not really work with such students. They need to have a friend in the class who is their age and they're more comfortable getting support from their own peers. So make sure that you have a seating arrangement in classroom, either in small groups or one is 2 students sitting together, one who is of who's learning at an average level and the one who's struggling, and so that they can help each other. Third is please make time at the end of the day to check in with this child, right? Spend like 15 minutes to check if the child really understood things that were taught through in the entire day. The class teacher can do that. Usually students struggle, in lower grades with such a challenge. So if the teacher can spend 15 minutes on a daily basis and make sure that you're regularly in touch with parents so that parents know that these are the things where the child is struggling. If the struggle is slow writing, then that's okay. You can give them notes, they can read those, they can cover up writing at home. But if the challenge is more that they take time to understand concepts, then you have to spend one-on-one time with them to help them, catch up with the rest of the class, because they might not be comfortable in a large classroom bringing that up. Teacher has to give them one-on-one support.
Ritika, there was this one question that had actually come in quite early onto this during the session. I'll just sort of rephrase the question that was asked. So as teachers, of course, the teachers need to sort of lead parents and students, but there's also a part of into their daily life that they have to lead a certain leadership, right? The school leadership, your principal, your school owner, and there's a certain kind of pressure from the leadership as well. So how do a teacher sort of maintain that relationship and also sort of balances and keeps the parents happy, ensure there's learning outcome while keeping their mental health also in check? So how to sort of there's so many stakeholders, and we of course didn't speak about the school leadership, but what do you suggest to someone who has asked this question?
Sure. I think if I understand correctly, right, teachers are sandwiched between students, parents, and then school management or principal on the top, right? And sometimes this stress does not come out very openly, but they're dealing with that. And sometimes this might come out in classrooms. This is why teachers sometimes are frustrated, angry, upset in classrooms. I think the one thing that teachers need to do is first be aware of this. If you're going through a challenge like this where you're not able to handle your emotions, or this is beginning to impact you, or make you anxious, please get help and step off from classroom. Like in a situation where you're in the classroom and you feel like you're going to have a bout of anger or anxiety or any of that, step out of your classroom. It's okay if 10 minutes you're not in the class, your students will manage themselves. That's absolutely fine. Second is, please have open conversations on weekly basis with whomever you're reporting into, right? And this is, someone had spoken about being from the IT background. I think this is a structure everywhere it should be followed, where you spend time with whomever you're reporting to, your manager. If you're a teacher, then the coordinator. If you're a coordinator, then the principal. If you're a principal, then the school owner. That you have a weekly conversation with them. Tell them what were some of the things that you are finding as a challenge, and seek support, right? Especially someone who's at a leadership level would have seen this very early on, or can zoom out and give you another perspective. So have constant communication with them. And similarly, have constant communication with parents. Sometimes parents have high expectations of their child, and that's fine. It's not a bad thing to have. But maybe in having those high expectations, the parent is expecting the teacher to really push the child a lot in classroom. And that's not healthy, which is why I was mentioning earlier that constant communication with parents is very important. Do make sure that you do at least a PTM once in 2 months, meet the parents in person, spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about every child, have that conversation to say that, leave marks aside for a minute, but here is how your child is in the classroom, right? That reduces pressure from parent end, because parents now knows exactly what is happening. And also very openly put down your expectations. If parents have expectations from teachers, teachers also should have expectations from parents, right? We're partners in making this happen. They should also put it out and say that, hey, I want your help in making sure your child is doing these 2-3 things at home. Please check on their behavior. Please ensure that they're completing their work. They're coming in simple things like a neat uniform, or are eating on time, sleeping on time. This is something that I'm sure all parents any which ways do. But is reiterating and saying, I also have these expectations from you as parents, and I'd want you to be a partner in making your child a success. I think that really helps. And don't think that you're carrying the mountain alone. While the learning of the child is, yes, your responsibility as a teacher, you're not who's carrying the mountain alone, right? There is a parent, there is a school principal, there is school management, there are other students in the classroom and other teachers along with you. All of you are carrying that burden or mountain together, right? So don't think this is alone.
Thank you, Ritika. I think we have covered most of the questions. To the attendees, I am actually putting, a feedback form in the chat box. Please use this survey link to submit your feedback on this webinar. And what else do you want to, topics that you want us to cover in our future webinar? Ritika, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful, wonderful webinar. I'm sure our attendees have taken a lot of insights and would implement your teachings in their classrooms as well. Thank you, everyone,
Thanks so
for
much for
joining the
having me,
webinar.
Sneha. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. And I wishing you all the very best. I'm sure as educators, you're already doing very well. Just take one notch things higher and ensure that all of you become super educators and super teachers.
Thank you, Aruna ma'am, for saying that. She says that this was one of the best webinars she has attended. It means a lot to us. Thank you so much. Thank you, attendees. I will close the webinar in about a minute. For everyone who has joined this morning, we will be sharing the recording and the entire deck of the webinar to you in your registered email IDs. Yes, Nitin sir, we will also send a participation certificate along with the recording and the deck of the webinar. Thank you, Nitin sir. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you. We shall see you in our next webinar. No, Akshata ma'am, there is no different link. We will send all of the resources that we used for this webinar along with the participation certificate in the registered email ID. All right. Thank you, Ritika. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.